very interesting. We have a very interesting panel. And at this point, I would also indicate that this session is being recorded. So everybody be on their good verbal behavior this morning, as your thoughts will be recorded. We have a very interesting panel that I'm going to be introducing them as I go along. But at the top, I'll indicate that today you're going to be hearing a little bit from our president of the Caribbean Broadcasting Union, Mr. Anthony Green. There is also Petifa Lewis. I just really love that name. You know, if I was at the age where I was going to have a child, I'd have a girl, I'd give her your name. Miss Alison Demas, and the Demas name comes with a lot of academic weight behind it. You know, I'm sure that Alison is tired of hearing this, but she lives it. Sir Foote, Arnold Foote. We in Jamaica refer to him as JJ, and he is junior of another Arnold Foote that also is in the same line of business, and he has carried it on. And I think there are more JJs to come, right, Arnold? Miss Alicia George, who is CEO of Island Press Box, and that will round off the team that is going to be talking about this very, very, very interesting, critical issue for the industry of media. Anybody who is in the business of making a living around the industry of media certainly has an understanding of what has happened with social media's entrance into the space, and therefore it is quite apt that we'd have a room full of people wanting to hear everything that is going to be spoken about this morning. So without further ado, because we don't have a lot of time, we want to get going. I'm going to hand over to the CBU president, who's also with Starcom in Barbados, Mr. Anthony Green, to give his welcome and opening remarks. Over to you, Anthony.
Thank you so much, Madam Moderator, Dr. Claire, and let me say it is very good to have you chairing as the immediate past president as well. So we're looking forward to what you would bring in terms of chairing this occasion. Great to see all of you online. On behalf of the board of directors and membership of the CBU, it is truly a pleasure to be here to offer this welcome as one of the co-hosts along with CARICHAM of today's event. CBU and CARICHAM have recently forged formal relationships, which arose from a recognition of our mutual reliance on each other. And we're truly grateful to Ms. Petifa Lewis, president of the Network of Caribbean Chambers of Commerce, for ensuring that the month's discussions came to fruition. Thank you very much. In the MOU we recently signed, it is noted the primary aspects of our relationship are: one, networking with CBU membership and related stakeholders, and two, facilitation of communication between CARICHAM members and CBU members. Now, our two bodies overlap in jurisdictions, since both organizations include members from the Dutch, English, French, and Spanish Caribbean. We also overlap in mandate, as from our unique regional perspectives, we seek to contribute to the sustainable development of the Caribbean. CBU, we've acknowledged that CARICHAM represents the key cog in the engine of growth of Caribbean economies, micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. And it's important to recognize that while CBU members are primarily public service, values-driven media, and CARICHAM members are of necessity profit-driven, the effective operation of commerce and business require a dynamic and responsive media sector. And so together we play a key role in ensuring that Caribbean societies progress economically and socially. And one of the main points of intersection is advertising. And I will go a step further and say financial viability of media. And where advertising is concerned, this is why the CBU has decided to begin this series of public engagements with CARICHAM by focusing on that particular critical area. According to Statista, this year, ad spending in the advertising market of the Caribbean is forecast to reach $177 billion. That's $1,778 billion in the US. And while the largest slice of the pie is still with TV and video advertising, worth more than $500 million US, digital ad spend is predicted to grow to 70% in 2029, with a shift towards influencer marketing and interactive content to engage consumers effectively. That's a significant chunk of economic activity, we think, and definitely important to delve into and have a conversation. With today's lineup of presenters, we are well prepared and truly excited to hear from those who monitor that sector, represented by Ms. Alison Dimas. Welcome, Alison. Great to see you. CEO of Media Insight, based in Trinidad and Tobago. The experts who deliver the wide range of services found in that sector, represented by Arnold J.J. Foote, President of the Caribbean Division of the American Federation of Advertisers, based in Jamaica. The business people who daily are working with advertising professionals and agencies to ensure efficient and effective support to commerce and industry, represented by Ms. Alicia George, CEO of Island Press Box, based in Antigua and Barbuda. It's Caribbean well represented in our panel today, and from the looks of it as well, those of you who signed on. We will be expertly directed by our moderator, Dr. Claire Grant, herself a specialist in business of media from experience, training, and postgraduate research, which led to her doctorate in business administration. I thank all of you who have joined us live, as well as will experience this session when we disseminate the recording. On behalf of the CBU, I wish us all a productive and enlightening experience, and I expect that my wish will definitely be fulfilled. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Anthony. Anthony, as I mentioned, is the president for the Caribbean Broadcasting Union and is the general manager at Starcom Network, with the big radio brands over there that you know, are at the top of the market chain of radio in Barbados. Before we get through, just a little housekeeping. Your mics will not be open. However, if you have comments or anything, questions that you want to give, you can do so in the chat. And once we get into the actual presentations, please, make note of whatever it is that you have come to your mind while you're hearing what is being presented, and type away in the chat. And at the end of all the presentations, we will then try and take a look at everything that is there and give as good responses as we can. All right, we're going to move along now and get some greetings from Pettifer. I just love that name. Pettifer Lewis is a Grenadian national who currently serves as chair of the Network of the Caribbean Chamber of Commerce, CARICHAM, executive director and secretary to the board of directors of the Grenada Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Ms. Lewis holds a master's degree in business administration from the University of the West Indies and is also an accredited director with certification from the Chartered Governance Institute of Canada. She has experience in working in both private and the public sectors. Ms. Lewis has a passion for sustainable development and the preservation of our earth for future generations. She's a strong advocate for sustainable regional economic development, enhanced trade, and functional integration. She advocates for every voice to be heard, respected, and valued. Through her leadership, she continues to drive collaboration among businesses and governments to create pathways for growth and prosperity in the Caribbean, while playing a meaningful role in the delicate balance of creating wealth while preserving the environment. Pettifer, over to you.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Grant. First, let me thank Anthony Green for so eloquently explaining our relationship and CARICHAM. So I would need to go into talking more about CARICHAM. So let me, on behalf of the Grenada Chamber of Industry and Commerce and the Network of Caribbean Chambers, CARICHAM, welcome you to today's webinar on traditional media versus social media. In this session, we will explore how businesses can leverage both traditional and social media to reach diverse customer segments. However, of course, businesses are challenged in terms of which one to use when. So for example, we have challenges in audience reach and demographics. What platforms aligns best with the target audience? Cost implication, of course, trying to balance between budget constraints with platform effectiveness, and also looking at content, the longevity and the timeliness of content, lasting impact, and the immediate relevancy. And of course, we cannot leave out the question of trust and credibility. How do we gain and maintain credibility using the various media? Engagement and interactivity, how will we manage customer engagement at the various levels? Measurability and analytics, of course, you know that businesses need to determine how important data-driven insights are for their strategy and whether the channel's analytics can support their goals. Challenge of time and resource management, which is always limited. So there's a delicate balance in terms of allocating the time and staff effectively and balancing the team's capabilities as well as the skill sets with the demands of each medium. Exploring these challenges would guide businesses in making a more informed decision and creating a strategy that effectively utilizes both traditional and social media in their marketing efforts. So let us now dive into this exciting discussion on the benefits and the challenges of each to help us make more informed decisions for our businesses. Thank you very much. And over to you, Dr. Grant.
Thank you very, very much for that synopsis, kind of, completes Anthony's ring of why we're here and why this is of interest to all of us who are in this business. So thank you very much, Ms. Lewis. So moving straight into what we're all here for, we really want to get the feedback from the industry experts. So we're now going to move over to Ms. Alison Dumas, CEO of Media Insight. Alison Dumas is a true Caribbean woman. And as I said, she has a lot of historical academic pedigree that, predates her name. She's passionate about the region's development and creativity and is committed to full regional integration. Founder and Chief Executive Officer of Media Institute Limited, Alison, an attorney at law specializing in copyright and entertainment law, is a driven and visionary entrepreneur. Since 2011, Alison has been dedicated to tracking, measuring, and analyzing media content, including news, advertising, marketing, and public relations campaigns, as well as social media conversations. Alison has also served on several boards and committees, including as Chairman of the National Carnival Commission of Trinidad and Tobago, and as Chair of the Nova Committee of Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce. Alison, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Grant, for that warm introduction. And let me also thank the CBU and CARICHAM for this invitation. I must confess, I was so excited when I got the invitation that even though I was on vacation, I said no, I could not refuse this opportunity to discuss a very interesting topic. Because as a media monitoring company, we are often asked by clients, okay, what route should we take? Should we stick with traditional media, invest more in social media advertising, or, mix them both up? So let me get right into sharing my screen and my presentation. Gonna stop it a minute. Yeah, you see my screen? Right, sorry, is everyone seeing my screen now?
Yes, screen is
Yes. All right, great. So let's see, who do you think will win the war? I'll certainly share with you what are my views. So let's look at traditional media advertising. And certainly we've had a long history of this in the Caribbean. And as we know, one of the advantages of traditional media, this point was raised, I think, earlier on, is the trust. I think fortunately for us, to a large extent, we can still trust our traditional media in the Caribbean, notwithstanding, of course, the rise of misinformation and disinformation. And the other thing to always bear in mind is that traditional media tends to have high authority and credibility. So that even if you are quoted on a social media site, once that the source is from traditional media, that tends to give you really high credibility as well as authority. Having said that, however, with the rise of digital media, there are definite limitations in relation to advertising and traditional media. And some of these we are well familiar with. The question of higher costs. And also one of our main challenge is the absence or scarcity of industry accepted audience measurement data. And I want to stress industry accepted. And I will give, for example, Trinidad and Tobago as an example. So it's been 9 years since the Trinidad and Tobago Publishers and Broadcasters Association, along with the Advertising Agencies Association of Trinidad and Tobago, has commissioned a media survey. In the interim, we have had several media surveys, but somehow those surveys have not been accepted by the industry. And I think it's really only in Jamaica that we've had consistent media surveys that are accepted. In Barbados, and I know that the CBU president will probably take issue with me with that, although yes, there are regular surveys, there's always been a question of, is it really independent? Because it tends to favor a certain network, but I'll say no more. But certainly I think across the board, across the Caribbean, across the region, that, in the absence of credible audience measurement data, how are media houses really going to track the audiences? Especially now that we've become more conscious of the power of data and the need to be driven by data instead of basing it on, who we know and who we like. The other limitation with traditional media is the inability to target niche audiences accurately. Again, in the absence of audience measurement, or even audience measurement data that goes sufficiently deep. For example, in terms of psychographics, what are people's likes? What are their habits? What are their behaviors? And then, of course, the lack of real-time engagement with customers, right? Always tends to be somewhat delayed. And there's a whole question of whether the whole concept of engagement, which is interaction, applies in traditional media. At the same time, we've really seen the rise of social media across the Caribbean. So quoting from Digital 2023 Caribbean, we see that as of 2023, mobile phone penetration across the region is over 80%, and internet access is continuously expanding. At the same time, we see social media platforms being widely used, not only for personal use, but also for business, with approximately 60 to 70% of the Caribbean population being active social media users. And of course, there are tangible benefits to social media advertising. So unlike with traditional media, with social media, you can really fine-tune and have a highly targeted audience. So you can know exactly who you want to receive your messages. You can do that by demographics, by market, by specific segments, by psychographic data, likes, interests, habits, behaviors. Another advantage is that, as we know, social media channels have inbuilt measurement and analysis. Also, there's the issue of real-time engagement, so that your customers can engage with your content and give you their response to your products and services in real time. And of course, very attractive proposition for businesses is that it tends to be cost effective. I just wanted to share with you, I found this really interesting, some of the most popular social media platforms across the Caribbean. So for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to focus on 5 countries in the region: Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Guyana, Jamaica, and Grenada. And interestingly enough, we see that in TNT and Jamaica, right? That TikTok has become the most popular platform. Whereas in Barbados, Guyana, and Grenada, Facebook still remains the most popular. And then along with social media advertising, in terms of perhaps, eroding the market for traditional media, especially in terms of television, we see the penetration of TV streaming services across the region. And we note in particular the high penetration of Netflix. So for the purposes of this study, we are going to focus on radio and television spot advertising, as well as newspaper display advertising. As I mentioned previously, there are 5 countries of focus, and the date range is October 2019 to September 2024, 5-year period. And the reason why I chose October 2019 is, of course, that was the last quarter before we had the COVID-19 pandemic really devastating us in the end of the first quarter and the second quarter of 2020. And I really want to thank Joe Taylor, our VP of Operations, for pulling the data that I'm going to share with you now. So when we combine the total hours of spot advertising on radio and television in all the 5 markets I mentioned, what we see is that the peak of just before the COVID, that last quarter of 2019, we see that there has really been a downward trend, and that we really haven't recovered post-COVID. It's also significant to point out that Grenada's spot time has been overall flat during the post-COVID period. Looking now at newspaper ads in key categories, and what I mean by key categories, with newspapers, we don't look at all newspaper ads. We look at those certainly in like the financial services, commercial banks, insurance companies, credit unions. We look at telecoms. We look at energy, tourism. We look at government advertising. We look at retail, the retail sector, a wide cross-section of sectors. And again, we see that post-COVID, newspaper advertising has maintained that downward trend. And also what we see, certainly for the first 2 quarters of 2024, we see this downward decline, especially from Q1 to Q2, and we haven't seen any improvement in Q3. So while we can expect some in Q4, it'll be interesting to see, to what extent there is in fact an increase. And now we're gonna do a comparison of the various markets. In this one, we have not included Grenada because, we want to compare mangoes with mangoes. And whereas in these 4 countries, there are daily newspapers, as is the case in most of the Eastern Caribbean, newspapers aren't published on a daily basis, perhaps 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes even once. So what we see again is the ongoing downward decline in newspaper advertising. Although we see in Jamaica, while there was a peak in second, third quarter of 2023, ads have been mostly flat for 2024, right? Whereas we see in TNT, Guyana, Barbados, that the ads have been, that there were some spikes, but generally we see that downward trend. Let's look now at TV spot advertising. So here we're looking at the total hours of television commercials. And here we're looking at the 5 markets. And again, what we see is the television advertising trends across the 5 markets show a leveling out of activity since the beginning of 2023, and definitely not recovering from the dramatic upheaval in COVID and the early post-COVID periods. Let's look now at the case with radio. And radio, we see a really dramatic scenario, especially in relation to Trinidad and Tobago. Look at this dramatic decrease, right, during the first few quarters of 2020 when the COVID pandemic had really set in. Right? Post-COVID hasn't been, uniform. We have seen some spikes, in Q4 2022 when we were in the process of, recovery and the lockdowns had ended. But since then, not even in 2023, Q4, have we seen any recovery. And in fact, we have seen a dramatic decline, and we don't expect much of a recovery. Interesting to note that in Jamaica, we did see a spike in the second quarter of 2021, but there again, we have seen this downward spike. Barbados has more or less been flat over, the last 2 years, and certainly 2024, Grenada and Jamaica has also been flat in terms of radio spot advertising. Now, whilst we don't yet have any data in relation to digital advertising, certainly what we do mainly in the Trinidad and Tobago market is that we track activity on the Meta-owned channels. These are Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger. And what I'm going to share with you now in the next 3 upcoming slides is a comparison between traditional media and the Meta channel activity. We're only going to be looking at 3 sectors, but these are 3 sectors that invest heavily in advertising. And these are financial services, which comprise commercial banks, insurance companies, as well as retail furniture, appliances, and electronics. And we're looking here again the past 5 years. And it's interesting to note that, even during COVID, we still see that there was more activity in traditional newspapers. However, look what has happened from 2022. And in particular, look what has happened in 2024. And we have every reason to believe that this upward trend that we are seeing in meta advertising, as opposed to traditional newspaper advertising, is going to continue. In relation to radio, similar story as that obtained with press. And what we see happening in radio and meta seems totally disconnected. I mean, look at this. However, again, 2024, we see this steep decline in radio advertising and TNT, and we see the upward trend in relation to advertising on Facebook and Instagram. And we have every reason to believe that this is going to continue in the future. And then finally, we're looking at television, the volume of television advertising in TNT compared with that advertising on Facebook and Instagram over the last 5 years. And while we see that TV advertising has tracked more closely than what we saw in press or radio, with a few notable exceptions, we have here a spike in Meta in 2022 and 2023. But again, look at this dramatic decline, some recovery in third quarter. And look here, we have the rise of Meta. Really dramatic. And like I said, we do expect that this upward trend in terms of advertising on Facebook and Instagram is going to continue. So what is this data telling us? Well, it's certainly telling us that the use of traditional media by advertisers continues a steady decline across the markets we have monitored, the 5 markets, with Trinidad and Tobago seeing the most dramatic swings, especially in relation to radio, and the steepest unrecovered declines since the COVID pandemic. So I am taking a controversial stance here, being a devil advocate, and I am saying that the war has already been won by social media. We see that traditional media advertising is in steady decline, with social media advertising proven to be more dynamic, cost-effective, with the ability to target specific audience segments and markets, as well as easily measure the effectiveness of advertising campaigns. And I am of the view that the Caribbean will continue to see an even stronger emphasis on social media, with businesses exploring new ways to harness platforms like TikTok. We see that in Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica, TikTok is the most popular social channel, as well as Instagram and YouTube for hyper-targeted real-time campaigns. The challenge for traditional media organizations is really how to monetize digital advertising. Because let's face it, the revenue from social media is going to big tech. It's going to Meta, it's going to Alphabet, owners of Google and YouTube, and it's going to ByteDance, owner of TikTok. So the question is the revenue from website display ads or subscriptions sufficient to generate profit? I'm throwing out that question, and I would love to engage in discussion. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Alison, for that thought-provoking presentation, which is based on the core of your business, which allows people to get a sense as to where audiences are and where advertisers are making their decisions about where they will spend. We quickly want to go into, because we do want to have enough time at the end for us to have conversations and, you know, respond to any comments, you know, encouraging you here to ask any questions that you might have in the chat so that we can have a discussion around about what you're asking after. So we're now going to move into a presentation from Arnold Foote. And Arnold Foote is a highly accomplished advertising professional with over 30 years, 38 years of experience in the industry. Currently serving as the executive chairman of the AdMark Network and the executive creative director of the AdMark Network, which is made up of 4 advertising agencies: Advertising and Marketing Jamaica Limited, as well as AdMark Limited in Kingston, Jamaica, FCB Foote Advertising Limited, Port of Spain, Trinidad, and AdMark North America, a Florida company. Throughout his career, he has achieved numerous successes and established himself as one of the world's top 100 most influential marketing personalities, according to the World Marketing Congress in 2018. Arnold's experience lies in advertising strategy and creativity, and he has earned multiple awards and accolades for his work. His expertise to various areas of advertising, including brand development, product development, and executing 360 campaigns for clients diverse in size and nature across multiple countries, including the North American diaspora. In addition to his achievements in advertising, Arnold has held significant leadership positions in the advertising industry. He has served as president of the Advertising Agencies Association of Jamaica and is the current president of the American Advertising Federation Caribbean Region, CAF. Furthermore, he is a Silver Council member of the Telly Awards. In 2018, he was honored with the Jack Phillips Gold Medal Award by the American Advertising Federation for District 4. Beyond his professional pursuits, Arnold Foote has also taken on the role of Consular General for the Republic of Turkey. This diverse background and range of experiences make him a highly respected figure in the Caribbean advertising industry, known for his creative talent, technical expertise, and influential presence. And so now I will hand over to Arnold Foote, who in Jamaica we affectionately call JJ. Over to you, JJ.
Thanks, Claire. Good morning, everybody. This is a large, intimidating group. I hope to do everyone and myself justice with this. I do have a couple of comments on, because coming after Alison, it's very difficult. So I kind of wish I had gone first, Claire, because there was so much data in there. You know, that was a great presentation, and thank you for that. Preceding whatever I come with today, I want to ask 2 questions, or I wanted to plant a seed in the back of everyone's mind based on the closing comments from Alison. The first one you need to ask, and that'll contextualize a lot of what I speak about today, is why did consumers migrate to social in the first place? And then the second part of that is, as they have cut the cord and potentially moved away from free-to-air towards streaming, what do you think that customers feel about that move right now and about their wallet right now? So I'm asking those questions ahead of everything. We can answer that at the very, very end. I am going to share my screen. I should have actually done that earlier, and make sure that I have sound playing through. So good morning, everybody. This should have been up because I really like the typewriter kind of effect. Yeah, so the battle for audience is really what the war is. It's not a simple question to answer. it is not something that is over. The battle is not over. Whatever battle that is happening is literally just beginning. And for those who are in what is affectionately called traditional media, it's the hardest part in your history where you are now. And I would like to tell you that it's going to get easier, but I can't tell you that because a lot of your future depends on you. The question is, where are the eyeballs? Are the eyeballs here where the family sits around in front of the TV? Is that right? Or is that wrong? Right? Or are the eyeballs here where, you know, people are walking down the street, they're catching off somewhere and their, you know, eyeballs are glued to their phone? Is that right? Or is that wrong? Or is it that your ears are, you know, here, they're on your normal free-to-air radio stations, or are they Spotifying? So they're, as an agency, from the agency perspective, we have to make these decisions that influence our media buys right out of the gate. We are sometimes going into presentations, even pitches with clients, and sharing an opinion on this kind of approach long before we even get a chance to do deep dives with clients and learn more about their business from a deeper relationship. The reality is, though, there's a subtle balance that's kind of like this, that when people are home, they'll have their phone, they'll have their device, they'll probably be listening to something within some kind of an earbud or headphones or something stuck in their head, and then the TV will be watching them and they will glance over, unless it's live sports, the World Cup, Olympics, Super Bowl, and then the balance of where their eyes fall will change. You're in a bus, you're being exposed to your phone for sure, you're probably streaming something into your headphones. You're passing billboards on the outside, and then you're interacting with whatever shop you're going to. So there's no one medium in the normal path of a consumer's life. So there are really multiple touch points. And the concept of it has to be either this or that, there has to be a winner, is maybe a stretch. And if you're in media, I don't think you should be like shaking in your boots and shutting down and letting go people and turning over your station to AI-driven content and all that. I don't think you're in that space. I think you're in the space of understanding that you hold your own place in the consumer's media world. Sometimes holding that space you have a responsibility in that space. And the responsibility is to adapt to their changing needs or their changing triggers, things that turn them on. And sometimes there's a failure. I'm gonna touch on that a little later on, but sometimes there's an immediacy to say, no, that's not how we do things. In an agency-client relationship where agencies are saying, hey, I'd like to do X. Oh, we can't do that. So leading a conversation in that relationship with an agency with we can't is not necessarily the greatest way to use a client's budget that they're willing to invest in an activation that may be outside of your normal day-to-day, but would bring relevance and a connection between the medium and the consumer. So receptivity from the media house is important to whatever the ideas are that the agencies are bringing. Because when you really check it, in an hour or 2 hours, people can read a newspaper, they can be on IG, they can be doing online newspapers. They'll be sitting in a line at the doctor's office, they'll be paying a bill at whatever, they'll be on a bus, radio, posters at point of sale, making their own playlists, whatever it happens to be. There are so many touch points. It's not necessarily only social media. So unpacking this, I'm going to ask everybody a question. I'm going to please put in the chat what happened on these 5 days. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to put, if you have a comment on any of them, put them in. I'm going to ask Claire if she can just tell me if anything does pop up. All right. Yeah, any feedback in there yet, Claire? You're muted, by the way.
Yeah, not seeing anything yet.
All right,
Sonia,
great.
some assistance, yeah?
No, that's great. So, and the last time I did this exercise, I had the very, very same thing. People are like, it's not my birthday. So the reality is it's the birthday of these platforms. So what is considered new media, the digital media is, a quarter century ago. When does this new media stop being new media? It's just media. So don't be intimidated by, oh my God, Meta's taking my money, or Google's taking my money, or TikTok is, they're taking my money. No, these are just media. It's the same competitive landscape that you would have if you had multiple TV stations. They're just places that currently are the new bright, shiny things that some of the young people get a chance to express themselves in a particular way. But that may not be the greatest thing ever, right? So, but let's just unpack that later on. It's just media. So I don't want to, even in our meetings inside the agency, let's talk about social media as this, and it's the savior of that, and we don't need to spend a lot of money in what is commonly referred to as traditional media, because we're going to put everything on social media. That would be a marketing communications mistake. There are layers of receptivity points that we're going to cover next that maybe online media, with all the kind of, I don't like using the words, but fake news and AI driven kind of content, and you can have influencers. Somebody mentioned earlier influencer marketing. You have influencer pages that are completely AI driven, that people are subscribing to and following over 1 million, 2 million people, and they're not real people. They're just code, which is a bizarre thing, that we're so desperate for stimulation that we're going to follow some code. Anyway, so media, all media has its place in the life of a consumer, right? And there are benefits. There are benefits to offline media. Let's discuss that instead of saying that they're traditional media. It's offline media. So what you would consider traditional media has great reach. It covers the broad masses, and they have access to it, and most of it is free. Some cable stations don't fall into that. There is credibility and trust that was discussed earlier by everybody that came on before me. You would consider that if you saw a news story on TV, or heard it during drive time news on radio, that chances are it's correct. But if you heard that story somewhere else, chances are you have to get it checked by Snopes. I don't even know how to say it. Anyway, so the reality is that the tangible impact that a print platform delivers, I know we're not talking about print so much, but you get to read it again tomorrow. The problem is with social, digital, that online media, which we'll get to, is that kind of 3-second rule. So you spend all this money, you have this influencer jump up and down and say all this stuff, and you scroll through it, and you connect with that moment for a couple of seconds, and you swipe on. Some people will share it, if it gives them a giggle. But does it sell? Well, we'll see. There is on offline media, there's mass appeal. You get a chance to cater to a wider demographic group. You do have higher engagement generally, because you just can't skip linear media. So when they're there, right? So it's incumbent on the communication to get the attention of the audience, so that they're not using it as a bathroom break or a snack break. And it's effective for sure for building brands. I'm using traditional media in the context of the fact that was a title of the entire forum today. but I'd rather you looked at it as offline media, right? With online media, yes, as Alison went through in very, very detail and kind of killed all these slides for me. Thanks, Alison. You have the ability to be targeted. It is cost effective generally, and it's measurable. So I'm going to unpack cost effectiveness in a way that is a little different. It's cost effective if you're just giving Meta a budget and say, hey, run with it and do X, Y, and Z. But when you get into a bidding war for actual keywords and stuff like that in your digital buys, it can become quite expensive. And when you get into a competitive season like now, we're going into Christmas, it is ridiculously expensive. You have telecoms in there, you have retail in there, and you have finance in there. And finance is looking for your found money at the end of the year. Telecoms is looking for the connectivity moments within everybody. And retail, come spend your money, buy your Christmas gifts. And the bidding war drives that price point up in digital. Then you still may get the trackable, measurable numbers, but you may not even get what you expected in terms of end of campaign reach, just because of the price point of your keywords in your search. So but online media gives you sustainability. You're not killing trees. No offense to newspapers. I hope there are no newspapers that heard me say that out loud, but you're not killing any trees when you have something up online. It's easy and fast, so you can say, oh, well, we have this challenge, this road is blocked, you can't get to my store, you can't get to my restaurant, there is a power outage, whatever it happens to be, you can get that messaging up online really, really quickly, and you have a whole slew of different kinds of platforms and formats that you can get things on. So that is a great advantage. You don't need to wait until tomorrow to get it into the newspaper, or until tomorrow to get it on TV because it happened at 6 o'clock and primetime news is at 7 or maybe even at 6, depending on the country that you're in. And you may not be able to get it on the station because everybody's gone home. Or as I recently experienced, the entire island closed down half day because there was a cricket game on the island. Smaller island, but it's real. There is no silver bullet, right? So if you are a client and you're thinking that this is my solution and I'm doing this, it's not a silver bullet. It's just a bullet you choose to fire. But there is a benefit to clients, and this kind of packages everything together, this online media, this digital media platform. I think the most important thing is the two-way communication. It allows you to engage in a conversation that offline media doesn't really allow you to do. Everything else, yeah, people can hide behind the data and say, look at all these people that saw my message. There's no real way to say that because they saw it, that they engaged with it, they believe in it, and that it influenced them. So if you even have bad communication out there, bad messaging, you might have the data to say, hey, look, we did our job. Our messaging was in front of everybody, but it was bad. So it didn't have any real impact. But the two-way kind of conversation, if you can engage in that, then you're really maximizing, optimizing the use of online platforms. So clients have this view, as I said, that digital media or online media is more targeted, flexible, and measurable. But traditional or offline has this broader reach and brand credibility. But if we're to spend time on TV, and I was given this 15-minute window, and I'm probably past that already. So I'm going to go as quickly as I can through this, but I will make this deck available to whomever wants it at the end. The television, I'm expecting a growth coming out of 2024, going through 2025 and beyond. I'm not the only person of this view. It's not going to grow by itself. It's not like you can just plant a seed and it's going to grow. It needs water. And I'll get into that in a second. There's a video that I'm going to cut short. Well, I have cut short because of timing. But remember, there's a lot of people that are, like my parents' age, over 50, that still engage with traditional media, and they have spending power. They have spending power that those 20s don't have. So if you're looking to sidestep everyone and just focus on things that are online media only, then of course there's something flying around during my presentation. Then you're missing an entire demographic of people who might see the credibility of the messaging that they see online kind of not optimal, because it's online and you don't really believe everything that you see. The impact, though, for TV does have the ability to deliver a message in a way, whether it is from a commercial or just a content delivery system. And I say that because if we're looking at the advertising business, just because something is on free to air or on offline media, it doesn't mean that it has to be a 30-second spot. There's branded content and there's placed things in shows that are developed. So the limitation of this particular discussion, you can't look at offline media as just a delivery system for a 30-second commercial, because it's not. And we need to look, it is incumbent on us as communications people that we need to look differently at all media. And I'm going to discuss that a little later on. So multi-screen, the real thing is that you have a multi-screen life for everybody, even the older folks over 50. Those people will, the data wasn't broken out in Allison's things, but those people will live more in a Facebook space than in a TikTok space, because that's kind of their comfort zone, and it's still an online communications platform. And they will have Facebook up, and they will connect with their friends from and they will still be watching TV at that point in time. Live sports, signature events, critical. It's not going to be the same online as it is offline. But if you have a common thread between online and offline, you are now in that golden space where you get a chance to have the audience feel truly connected to what they're doing in kind of an insider's approach when they're in the online space, but watching it in offline. So it gives that individual that even greater sense of self-importance, which is what a lot of that demographic that seeks all that 20s and down, and to young teens and what have you, they're looking for something that gives them a higher sense of purpose. And that connection will do it. There is an economic value of traditional offline TV. There's a way to deliver messaging in advertising and in content development that is certainly not fully explored and not optimized. So what's the outlook? Now, I've shared my thoughts. There is a little snippet in here from someone else.
Digital native D2C brands have to consider traditional media to grow awareness and to acquire more customers. Now, this is not my opinion, because this is reflective of an article in Media Post just last week. And the discussion was talking about, why are these companies going to traditional media? Well, it's pretty simple, and I think if you're a direct-to-consumer digital native company, you understand this. So long gone are the days where you can build a brand and scale a business online. You can start a company, you can start a brand, but you're not going to build it, you're not going to scale it, and it's simply because of fighting for the eyeballs, paying more and more for that media, and then on top of that, living in a cookieless world where
it still hasn't been figured out, which is how that continues. So the idea of integrating technologies is this convergence. This is where things really need to look towards. Agencies like my own, we need to do more of this. Now, everybody here on this platform, I mean, you know what a QR code is, and that is something that it had its moment a couple of years ago. Then it kind of went somewhere else, and now it's back with a vengeance, right? You have people that are at road shows and street events, and you know, in the supermarket and they have scan me different body parts, scan me tattoos, whatever it is. The reality though, it started a few years back. We even have it on our Best Dressed Chicken packaging. So you can learn about the people that grew the chicken. So there are different videos for whatever batch of chicken that comes into the stores. There was something important at the time because Jamaica was faced with a lot of imported chicken, and we needed to build a kind of relationship with not the pack, but the person who raised the chicken. Anyway, back in 2007, that was when the first QR code was introduced. And it was introduced in the form of a music video. So if you're familiar with the Pet Shop Boys, I'm not playing the whole thing, but it will be in the deck that I send around. If you are familiar with the Pet Shop Boys, that was when it first started. It was actually formally used during, I think, Ad Week in 2009, and then it started its life there. Again, this is a short snippet, and then I will come back after.
All right, punks, wake up. You, my most astute agents, have been called here for a mission. The task of decoding the future of advertising. Do it, you'll be sucking down pina coladas on a beach in the Caribbean. Screw it up, you'll be back in your office gnawing cold pizza. You are now looking at the 14 most dangerous people in the business. They are the masterminds. They know too much. And each one of them carries a unique QR code. They're all here, all around you at this summit. So track them down and scan their QR codes with your cell phone. And listen up, you need to find all 14, you hear me? All 14. If you do, we might fly you down to the Caribbean and treat you like a freaking king. If you don't.
So the language gets a little more expressive. So I'm going to move on past that. So currently there is there are campaigns that are using QR codes that are happening. And again, I'm going to just play one last, it's a 60-second commercial, and then I'm going to try and get through the end and wrap up as fast as I can.
So, the Engine One app allows my dad to send me fuel vouchers, which really helps me get home for the holidays. Yes. But Diamond, he treats me like a little girl, like, Nana, don't forget to put fuel in the car.
So I'm just, again, going through it. You're going to get the video a little later on. That is, that's where that combined, that's actually a three-way. So that takes traditional media, TV, combines it with a digital platform using QR code, driving people to a particular space, and then the story is amplified in social space. Then there's a concept of the continued story, use of the integrated use of the digital platforms or the online platforms with the offline platforms. And a great example is GoDaddy. So GoDaddy was launched a few years ago. I don't remember, but a long time. And what they did was take a little bit of a risque view. There were loads of complaints. There was all kinds of stuff, but you cannot knock it for...
Dudes, check it.
Oh, your new domain name and website from GoDaddy.com?
Yep, and now that I'm online, it's like I can make anything happen. Danica Patrick.
Suddenly I have the urge to take another shower.
This is awesome!
Keep watching.
This is my 5th shower today.
Steamy. Steamy? Let's add the German woman from the dean's office. Miss Schmidt!
So you'll see that the stories continued online, and you saw more, and that drove people to GoDaddy, and people learned. Alison did a really good job at mentioning print and how that was really strong through the kind of beginning of COVID, but has fallen off. And it continues to fall off. We feel it as well, that it doesn't necessarily hold the same pride of place certainly in Jamaica. I see more print activity in Trinidad, to be honest. But an augmented reality expression, again, taking a digital story and telling it on top of a printed piece. So this is, I'm not going to play the whole thing. You will get the whole video and see more then, but this gives you an idea.
Christopher Columbus,
John Adams, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Madison.
If you swipe like in the history book, you see like men in every single page.
History absolutely has been his story. History has been written by men for men.
So the importance with that is that you have the ability to layer something on top of your printed pieces, billboards, anything, posters, and it's not truly being explored, and that's the agency's fault, or that's the client's fault. You don't know. Sometimes the agencies present ideas to the clients, and truthfully, the client's not willing to take the risk. Understand that fully. But if you're in media, I would not want to close and make you think that the outlook is bleak. It's not. You need to treat agencies like friends. I'm going to say that because I have an agency and I have very powerful relationships with media. They're very important to us, and they're that important ingredient in our whole mix. Claire has been an amazing media partner over the years for us. You need to co-create. You need to co-create with media. You need to co-create with your clients. You need to recognize that if you're an agency, clients are people too. Clients have a depth of knowledge about their business that you will never have. Media, you can't sell shows. You have to sell the eyes. People are not necessarily buying the shows, but they will buy the eyes. How you sell it is what's important. And then proving that you have the eyes is the other challenge. So there was a thing about, Alison did say media survey acceptance. And in Jamaica, the word acceptance would be a little bit of a stretch. It's a stretch only because we get a formal survey from like a media agnostic source. And then there are conflicting surveys coming from other media houses because media houses don't necessarily agree with it. And then there's the interpretation. So we kind of use it as the only source we have, but we also supplement that with our own research. So it's a difficult thing to use the data anywhere in the Caribbean, I believe. I believe that media needs to invest in good quality content that you can't get on streaming platforms or cable channels, because that's the reason why people are going to connect locally. And it cannot be talk shows. It cannot be a bunch of people with their hands under the desk, looking very serious. Those days are gone. I hope that I'm not mashing anybody's toes, but you need to create content that is engaging, that people want to turn on. They cannot miss it because it has a level of energy and people feel drawn to that energy. And don't share that content immediately unless it's for a teaser to draw people. I've noticed that a lot of newspapers now have been actually sharing their pages for the papers on their social streams and wondering, well, why should I buy the paper if I can just read it there? All of a sudden, it's just kind of lost me. But you definitely want to support and inspire local productions. You want to get the local musicians, you want to get the local spin doctors, you want to get the local TV producers to do as much as they can for the local stations. Unfortunately, the local producers are looking offshore. They want this stuff to go to Netflix. They want to create a different relationship because they're not being fully supported, I believe, from the local media houses. So if you build that support, you will have a lot more content that is unique to your territory. So it's incumbent on agencies to create the right touch point opportunities. It is incumbent on media to be more receptive to change and to new executions that involve them. That means that they may need to break the programming a little bit, or they may need to break how they would normally do things. But it's incumbent on all of us to recognize that social platforms are here to stay. and that recognized commercial receptivity is compromised due to that lack of credibility. And social media is invasive, and I don't believe that we're using social media the way that it needs to be, where it's organic and things just kind of flow through where it feels natural. What it is really is a 1080 by 1080 ad with a logo at the bottom right-hand corner, or overly branded, and a lot of stuff is just throwing at people, and it doesn't need to be that. So who will win the war? This is why we're here, right? Who will win the war? Now, unlike Allison, I have a different view. The consumer wins the war. The consumer wins the war because you're going to battle for those consumers. You're going to improve your content. Agencies are going to continue to evolve their communication. Clients are going to continue to evolve their offers and their ways of connecting with consumers. So the consumer wins. And as long as we recognize that we have to keep the consumer winning, we'll keep the consumer, full stop. So thanks. Feel free to reach out if you want to scan my QR code. It's a tattoo on my right shoulder, but I'm not taking off my shirt for you. So you can scan it right here. Reach out. I'll share anything once I can. All right. So continue to inspire desire. And thank you very much for listening.
Okay, JJ, thank you very much for that presentation. I'm sure it's really thought-provoking for everyone, and especially coming after a declaration as to who was winning the war. And it's interesting that you also have a declaration as to who is going to win the war. I'm going to quickly move into Alicia George's presentation. Alicia is an award-winning investigative journalist who has been practicing for over 11 years across various platforms to include television, radio, online, and newspaper publications in the Caribbean region. She began her career as a script editor in Dominica in 2015 and currently practices in Antigua and Barbuda, operating an online website, Island Pressbox. Her work is dedicated to ensuring the Eastern Caribbean member states achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals to improve their lives of their residents. She's a former news director at Grenville Radio and former newsroom supervisor and social media manager at the Antigua Observer. 2021, she won an award for the best journalist in Antigua and Barbuda, presented by the Antigua Barbuda Gospel Music and Media Award and Junior Chamber International Media Trailblazer Award in 2023. She's also an alumna of the Young Leaders of America Initiative. Over to you, Miss George.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Most of the presenters, they have covered really what my introductory slides would have been. And so I am going to skip to really just speaking about the choice for businesses on which medium to use for advertising. A lot of people think that it might be an easy choice, or, you know, I'm going to get a bang for my buck with digital or social media, but it's not as easy as just saying that. Traditional media, as a lot of the presenters before me would have said, it gives a sense of high credibility. When you hear it on the radio, when you read it in the traditional newspapers, nobody really questions whether or not it's true. However, if that same information is transmitted onto a digital medium, then people start to question and they have a lot of opinions. Now, I can't speak for the entire CARICHAM family, but here in Antigua and Barbuda, we don't have physical newspapers. What we have is a digital version of the newspaper, which in itself presents a very interesting dynamic, because the platform or the foundation for newspapers was really to have something like a little trinket that you can keep with all your stories that you can archive. It was great. It's what the population, 45, 50 years and above, they were accustomed to and they love. So now that we've switched onto putting what's in our newspaper onto a digital platform, we now risk leaving out that segment of the population. Because oftentimes I wonder, well, what is the difference with sending me a digital paper via WhatsApp or going to your website to access a digital paper when that same information is already on your news website? It's kind of self-defeating. Still, newspapers in Antigua and Barbuda, at least, they produce most of the revenues for media houses simply because there are statutory bodies or policies that require agencies to post in a newspaper, whether physical or not. And so they continue to make that type of money from there. But I've always said, well, do you wait for the change to happen, or do you move in a direction and let the change follow? Because at the end of the day, if media houses do not position themselves to take advantage of digital media and what it affords, they're going to be left behind saying, well, we currently make our money there, and what if we switch? How are we going to make money? And so what I've seen is really just kind of reluctant to transition fully to digital media. And that's not a bad thing, because we live, especially the smaller islands in the Caribbean, in the OECS, we live in a disaster zone. And so when telecommunication services are off, when you're cut off from your family and friends via road access and so on, where do you turn to? Certainly not digital media. Nobody's phone is working. You can't see what somebody's saying on Facebook or TikTok until those matters are resolved. But one traditional media medium that always remains true and true is radio. Everybody in times of disaster will gather around a radio to hear news that they believe is credible. And so I do agree with Arnold when he says there's room for two. There is room for two. However, we just have to know as businesses what works best for us. Placement, for example, in front page placement in a physical newspaper or a paperback paper would have been $10,000, maybe about 5, 6, 7 years ago when we had our last physical paper. Right now, the cost has gone down to $3,000, and that's the offering of media houses. So media houses had to take a dramatic cut, first of all, switching from physical paper to digital media. And so what they're trying to do is to still keep that money coming in from the consumers, from businesses, but it's a challenge, especially when you have things like influencers and content creators that are taking over niche markets that you as a newspaper could be covering or should be covering, but you're unable to do because of a lack of resources and so on. And advertising on cable television, because we have one cable television or broadcast media house here, which is ABS, and you don't often see advertising to the extent that it used to be maybe 10, 15 years ago. I mean, even during an election period, you may have seen a bunch of ads, people are coming and they're talking, vote for me, vote for me. But what the focus has been for the past couple of years is really just pushing that same content on Facebook and Instagram. Even WhatsApp is a very, very big digital medium within the Caribbean region, because I believe what a lot of the persons who want to advertise were considering was reaching younger people. And they figured, well, younger people are on these platforms. But in trying to reach younger people on these platforms, we ignore a very essential thing, as in how do they receive that information, right? I think it was Arnold, was it you who mentioned that persons just really just scroll by? It's a couple seconds and it's gone, and they don't remember what it is that you put. But you might see it has a click. You might see, oh, this post has 75% readership. But when you go into the details of the readership, you would see that that person probably stayed on that video for 3 seconds. So they're not really retaining the information. But I, as a website, might be able to say, well, I had 500,000 views on this particular video, so come advertise with me. And you as a business, you're going to jump onto that opportunity because you're like, 500,000 views, that means 500,000 people are going to see my ads. And that is not the translation that often happens. Unless it is, now I'm seeing that some websites are actually forcing you to watch the ad. So in order for you to view their content, you have to watch the entire ad. And that in itself can get annoying. If I have to do that to read a news story, especially if it's a breaking news story, I'm going to move on to another media house where I don't have to watch an ad before I can see what is happening. In terms of businesses switching over to social media, mainly Facebook as advertising, and saying, well, we're not going to depend on traditional media anymore because it's too expensive and I can do it much cheaper, there are a few risks associated with that. One, they risk their branding name and credibility, because social media is a global environment. You may say, well, my target market is Antiguans from age 18 to 35. But once you put that on social media, once you put that content on social media, your target market is everybody from Antarctica to Antigua, anywhere where they can see that, and that is your target market. And what ends up happening is that if people are not satisfied with the content that you're providing, with the language that you're using, and especially when it gets influenced by other countries' economic issues, it can reflect very badly on your brand, and you will risk your brand name. Similarly, if there is so much input by people who are not even directly buying from you as a business, that you decide, oh, let me change this particular thing on my logo because I saw, 50 people say they don't like this color blue. But maybe half of those 50 people are not even in the market you're trying to target. And then you change that logo, and all of a sudden you start losing business and you're scratching your head and you're wondering, well, where, why, how? Now, this is where traditional or media entities are necessary, because it is that they have specialized persons to deal with things like social media branding, or they're able to train their people in how to get the most out of digital media. Then you stand a better chance even bringing your digital business to the media houses that now stand. And therefore, you can benefit from traditional media. Everybody listens to the radio. You can have an ad on the radio. The cost of ads, dependent on how long you want the ad to be, could be as low as maybe $50 EC dollars. You can mix that with maybe social media marketing with that media house. And the advantage that the media houses have as well is that they have way more followers than you might have if you create a Facebook page, which is what we're seeing with a number of businesses. They wake up one day and they say, I'm going to create a Facebook page and I'm going to do my own advertising and save this money. But they might have 12 followers. The media house that you're following has 500,000. So you need to balance those things and know how to use those platforms properly. When we get into using platforms like Facebook, it may seem easy. You just post and you share, but there are details within metadata in Facebook that allows things to go sideways. And the next thing you know, and I think that technically might be a flaw in Facebook as well, the next thing you know, you're getting a message from Facebook saying, well, you violated one of our rules because you posted something. They don't tell you what the violation is, but the next thing you know, you're not able to advertise at all, period, ever again on that Facebook page. And so you might have amassed thousands and thousands of followers in the past, and you're like, yes, business is booming, advertising is great. And just like that, Facebook says, oops, sorry, you can't do it anymore, right? So those are the things that we have to consider. I spoke a bit about a business's inability to transition. And I want to add here the inability of some media houses to transition as well. A lot of the media houses in our region are owned by older people maybe in their 60s and above, who don't quite understand the power of social media, the far-reaching of digital media. And so they stay within their comfort zone, and they're not able to let go of that antiquated idea that you have to do this particular way in order for it to work. And I think it's not only persons working within the media agencies that need to be trained or need to do their research, but it's also the people, especially I should say, the people managing those networks. Now, a big thing in the Eastern Caribbean, and I suspect in all Caribbean countries, or in all countries even, is the role of politics in advertising. A large chunk of advertising in Antigua and Barbuda, and in places like Dominica, Grenada, and so on, they come from political parties, or they come from the government. if you are talking against the government, if you are working against the government as a newspaper, if you're bringing up, as we like to say in Dominica, all the newspapers, therefore, then guess what? They're going to pull the advertising and they're going to go to the media houses, or they're going to go to the mediums where they can say whatever it is that they want to say. And an example of that really is government agencies, ministries of health and education, who no longer advertise in the traditional or even digital newspaper. They decide that they form their Facebook page and they will post that content onto Facebook, and magically everyone will see it. And they do this thing where they take an entire press release. They don't send it to the media houses like they usually do. They copy and paste the entire press release with a photo and they post it on their Facebook page. And then a month later, where they're wondering, well, why is nobody showing up to this event? Because nobody saw it. You can't just post something and feel like, well, yes, people have seen it. Another thing that we have to contend with as media houses is the impact of content creators and influencers who are obviously cutting into the revenue of media houses. They are taking fresh new takes that media houses are not taking on issues that people care about, or just sometimes, a lot of times, it's really just salacious news, but they feed into what it is that they think the consumers want to hear, which is where media houses have to toe the line, because obviously we have to consider the legal and ethical implications of things that we write and say, whereas an influencer is more likely to get away with it. We might have to, pay money through the courts. So a lot of things need to be considered when we're choosing, well, should I go with traditional media? Should I go with a newspaper? Should I put up a billboard? And billboards are not talked about often enough, because I'm feeling that they don't have the impact that they once used to have when there was no social media, or maybe many people didn't even have televisions, but they would see something on a billboard. Based on where that billboard is placed, nobody's seeing that information. And the way that traffic is these days, and the way that people are always on the go, and Arnold mentioned people using multiple devices at once. I'm a chronic user of multiple devices. I will sit in front of my TV, I will have my laptop on, and I'll be on my phone on TikTok, right? So whichever gets my attention at any given second, that's what I'm paying attention to. And so we have to weigh those things and come up with a blended approach, both as media houses and as businesses, as to what we're going to advertise firstly, who we're going to advertise to, and how we're going to do it. Because the who we're going to advertise to seems to be expanding as the year goes by. People often refer to target audience, especially when they're writing business plans, like, oh, who is your target audience? And I will say controversially, I don't think that there is a target audience anymore, especially with digital media, because everybody is seeing everything. And you can't exactly say whether or not, I'll give an example. If I am advertising a brand to women, and I say to Facebook in the algorithm, I am only interested in my content reaching women of XYZ age, then Facebook is going to share to XYZ age. However, we must also take into account that maybe the brother, the uncle, the power, as we like to say, of the women would be able to see that content and share it with them too. And so when I say there is not exactly targeted audience anymore, that's exactly what I mean. Everybody's your audience. Everybody's able to share that information to draw revenue or consumers to your business and media house. That is your target audience. So we just, in closing, I want to just go through the pros and cons, which we highlighted before. So I'm going to do it very quickly. With traditional media, again, credibility and trust. We're in an era where everybody's talking about fake news, mainly thanks to Trump and United States politics. You can't do anything anymore. It's like, oh, that's fake news. That's not true. My auntie, uncle, cousin told me that this. I was like, okay, but I interviewed the person, the actual person that it happened to, but they don't believe you because, you can't be trusted anymore, which is an issue all on its own. Another pro of traditional media is wider reach, but that wider reach is in a specific demographic, people who watch television, who watch radio, which by the way is not to radio, which by the way is not a lot of people. I've spoken to people in their 40s who are like, I don't listen to the news. I get my information from my WhatsApp group or social media. I was like, that's crazy. You're a grown adult. Don't you need more details? But people are not necessarily interested in the nitty-gritty of things. They just want it quick. They want to see what's happening quick so they can form their opinion quick and make the decision quickly. High production quality. As I said, within traditional media houses, you have specialized workers, a graphic designer who has been doing the job for years and years and years, and he knows better than you how to put together an ad. So your content stands a better chance if it's created by a professional within that traditional media space. However, traditional media has a tendency to be very limited. It offers limited interaction, unlike social media where people can comment and give ideas and give feedback, and that will allow you to probably change certain parts of your operations, your businesses, or how it is you communicate. You can't do that with the newspaper or the billboards or even posters, because you see it and you see it, you just keep your comments to yourself and you move on. There's also the difficulty in measuring the effectiveness of the advertising that goes in onto those mediums. Now, if I'm paying you $10,000 for a front page ad, I want to know how many people actually saw my content and whether or not I will be doing business with you. Again, traditional media does not offer that. And there is a longer lead time. Of course, everybody's on a schedule. The paper has to be out by a certain time. So if you make a mistake, you can't correct it before the paper goes out and so on. Those are very tricky. In terms of social media, of course, the pros are the whole world is your target audience, right? You can cater to people with different interests in different locations, different behavior. You never know. Somebody might be living in the UK and they're planning a trip to Barbados or something, and they saw some culinary acting that you posted on Facebook, and they're going to go right to your business when they come down. And so your target audience is everyone with social media or digital media. It's more interactive, it's more engaging. People can share your content more easily. It's more cost effective if you know what it is that you're doing. Because as mentioned before, when it comes to wars of advertising, it's different. You have to spend more money. And if Facebook sees that it's targeting or you're targeting the same people over and over again, your share, your views might go from maybe 10,000 viewers a month ago to now maybe 100. But you're like, I'm paying the same money. I'm doing the same thing. What is happening? So it's cost effective if you know what you're doing. Data-driven insights. We have a problem in the Caribbean collecting data. That's a pro of social media and digital. We're able to measure how many clicks, likes, shares, conversion rates, and so on that we get. And we're gonna be better in making business decisions in terms of advertising because of that data that we get. Of course, as I mentioned before, everything has a con. When we talk about digital media, I want us to think about too the saturation of media websites that we now see throughout the region, especially in Antigua and Barbuda. It seems like perhaps every month or every other month, you see a new website popping up. They all have the same content. And so it becomes a race for who can post first, who can post the most salacious, and really who's paying attention at the time that you're posting. So there is saturation of the market of media houses itself, and then that turns over into ad saturation, which make people really fed up of seeing the same ads over and over again. And businesses who decide to use digital media on their own without any expertise from anybody else, without a marketing agency, they often just post the same things on different platforms, not knowing that different platforms call for a different way of posting. The way that you post your content on Facebook, you shouldn't post it that same way on TikTok, because the drivers of what prompts your audience to look at it is very different on those two platforms. You have less control over your brand image. As I said, once you put something out in the media, you leave it open to criticism. It could harm your reputation and the reputation of your business based on what you put. And there's privacy concerns. If you're a financial institution, know that platforms take your data, they use your information for, whether it is that they use it for streamlining your targeting audience. The fact of the matter is they now have that information that they can use. And so those are some of the things that you want to consider. And so in conclusion, traditional and social media, to me, they each offer their unique strengths, and the choice will depend on the brand goals, the audience, and the budget. So what is it that you're trying to achieve with every campaign or marketing advertising that you're trying to put out there? Consider whether your main audience, your primary audience, they are more averse to something like radio. Most of them listen to radio, and so you go that route, whether you want to do a mixed blend. So with the evolving trends, I suggest that businesses use a strategic mix of both mediums that may offer the best results for their brand. But I also think that media houses through which they have to advertise also need to improve their game. They need to get with the times. They need to get in line with what is happening, because we all have to work together. And AI is the big thing that we're talking about right now. And people think, oh, AI is going to take my job and whatever. I love AI, but you have to know how to use AI to love AI. People think that they can just say, build me this brick wall and AI will do it. You have to learn how to communicate. It's a language like French, like Spanish, like English. You have to know how to communicate with AI in order to use AI within your advertising and within your marketing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alicia. I think we've had really engaging and varying perspectives on this issue. I know that we are up to 50, and I think there are more than 50 people in. It's not a surprise, really, that so many people were engaged in this product as a webinar, because it is one that addresses something that I am really very passionate about, which is the business of media, right? So often we have conversations about journalistic side, and then we might have some concerns specifically about marketing. And this kind of has brought everything together in terms of what is it that we really do? How do we really do it? Summarizing at the top, Alison said, hey, social media wins. We went into JJ, and JJ said, look, the consumer, I think, is the one who's going to win, because they're going to help to make everything, that decision about it. And at the end, Alicia would have been expressing that basically it is a conclusion of looking at which one works best, right? I'd like to summarize a little bit by saying there's some very important points that came out. One, the whole issue of how we are measuring what is taking place, what is available as a measurement. I actually think that part of what Alison has expressed, she has already gone into an opportunity that is there. And in her conversation, there is actually more opportunities in terms of getting people to understand what is actually happening with the various media outlets. Significantly, I think, was the idea of social media, traditional media. Seriously, it's just media. I will indicate that I am currently lecturing a course with the University of the West Indies, where I actually indicated to the class this year that this is probably going to be the last year that we talk about new media versus traditional media, because at this point, it really is just media. And I think we are at the point where we need to start to have that conversation, because the idea of thinking that one of them is better than the other is probably withholding a lot of important things that we could unlock. One of the things that I don't think was addressed very deliberately, but it's something that we should look at as food for thought, is that context matters. The context of the various territories within the region matters. Alison showed data which is suggesting that in Trinidad is a very different kind of behavior of print there. I think JJ alluded to it as well. In Antigua, Alicia is talking about power of radio there and what happens in that space. I think the other area that was brought up, and I would summarize to say that this is very important for us to think about, is that there are different demographics. And for whatever reason, throughout the history of the world, it happened when we were all young. For whatever reason, we think that young people are the only important people that exist at every point in time. However, within the media landscape, there are various people that have various things that are important to them. And one of the things that is important, I think, about with the plethora of platforms that we have is that there is a way to isolate and pretty much, I use this word, narrowcast to different demographics and to different interest groups. And that becomes something that is a new opportunity. There is a whole question of aging populations in Jamaica, what is going to happen as a result of the pension crisis that is going to happen, what is going to happen as a result of health. Who is speaking to those people, and can you speak to those people via social media? Or can you speak to those people via traditional media? Or, as JJ has indicated, is there a mixture that gets to that demographic? And to go to Alicia's point, maybe in talking to that particular problem, it might not actually be those people specifically that you need to have the conversation with, but the people who are going to care for them, who are probably younger. So I think that we had a really rich engagement. In going through, I haven't seen any specific questions. There's a lot of kudos about the presentations. Everybody thinks that the presentations were really on point. Somebody indicated that people's attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. On that note, I would like to add, it didn't come up in any of the presentations, but there are two things that I think are critical to this conversation, and one has to do with the effectiveness of advertising, right? I think JJ alluded to the point that there are a variety of things that impact on the effectiveness. The platform and the channel is just one of them. The actual ad is important. And then I think also just having a sense of where it is you want your brands to go and where you'd like your brand to live in the world to come. Is your brand a short-term brand, or is your brand a brand that wants to be around for 100 years? Which of these platforms and which mixture of these platforms is going to make it happen? So at this point, before I go into Anthony's wrap-up, I would ask if there are any specific questions that anybody has that they'd like to put in the chat. Now is the time to do it while I fill the space a little bit. I would just want to point out again, just from an academic space, you know, there is a theory of how companies and businesses remain relevant and profitable, and it's called resource-based view. And they talk about having resources that are rare, having resources that people cannot imitate, having resources that people cannot substitute, and having resources that are really valuable. Those four things, I think, come to bear on every business discussion all the time. And as things become more dynamic and evolve, those things are still important. And at the end, I think everybody spoke to it. Content is always going to be king. And the demand now for all media is to determine how they get content that is rare and is valuable, is difficult to substitute, and people can't imitate it. If you can clean those four things up, then you are going to be able on any platform, in any space, to attract consumers who Arnold said will win, and therefore advertisers who you want to spend money on your platform. So as I said, I haven't seen any questions come up. SG, Sonia, am I correct?
That is
Not
correct.
seeing any questions. Lots of kudos on the presentation. So to the panel, congrats and thanks for making this probably one of our CBUs. I'm saying or, and I can still as IPP, right? President Anthony, one of the more successful webinars that we've had. And I'll hand over to Anthony for him to wrap.
What a tremendous matchup we had here today, I think. In wrapping up, I just want to put an accent on media. And I just love how we've come together to recognize it's media. and how resilient we have been over many years across many changes in platforms and technology. And that's a conversation for another time. And we've been reliable as well. And that's important for us to continue to be reliable. And of course, a lot of what we're discussing now has to do with relevance. And I say that because there is room for us to look at the heart of media, the heartbeat of media, which goes beyond the platforms. And essentially, we're looking at the critical values that we bring to the table. And as Arnold said, so eloquently said, it's about the people at the end of the day. This is a quote here I'm going to share with you from the World Trends in Freedom of Expression and Media Development Global Report. And at the end of the day, this is why this conversation is important. It says here, media viability requires that the overall economic and business environment provide conditions conducive for independent media, together with a political and social environment, enables journalism to perform its role, and listen to this part, as a public good, as a public good. And when we begin to think of the work of media and the role it plays in our society, we recognize that conversations like what we're having here right now become something that we need to continue to have. Having said that, I want to say thank you so very much, Pettifer Lewis, for your remarks and for really fusing this partnership between CARICHAM and CBU. I want to say thank you so very much for the partnership and for allowing us to have this forum today in the way that we have gathered. Addison, who delivered the knuckle punch earlier o'clock, deliberately provocative and play devil's advocate. Thank you so very much, Addison, for your presentation as well. That's important because we can't bury our heads in the sand. We must make sure that we have information, data, to be able to assess what's happening. And I think one of the things I'm taking away from your presentation is research is important. Research is critical, and we need that to be a part of what we're doing as we move on. Arnold J.J. Foote, objective, very, very objective. We love agencies too. JJ, your presentation really was thought-provoking. And at the end of the day, you really brought it home. Consumer at the center. That's it, because they will choose the platforms in which they digest the information, and the pictures that you use to tell the story really went in depth, and we enjoyed what it is that you brought to the table. Elisha, practical examples of pitfalls when advertising, and also showing the importance of maximizing that advertising investment. I thought that you also did a good job, and I'm sure everyone was thankful that you were able to bring that perspective to the table. And of course, our chair for today, immediate past president, Dr. Claire Grant, and you brought context as usual. This has been a lot of information that we received today, but just bringing context to the presentations that we had was indeed important. I want to say thanks to the advertisers, to those who represent advertising, but those who represent the business community, because there are two things that I think about. You continue to use media to have a voice. There are things that are important to the business community that you speak about in our media daily. It ends up in our news, in the programs you buy, having perspectives on the current affairs, and you continue to have a strong voice. And when you speak, people listen. And we think that kind of relationship is important. But let me also say thank you for continuing to invest in media as well. Because at the end of the day, I think where the conversation needs to go, we need a strong media to continue to have a thriving democracy. And one of the things that is being said very clearly, very, very loudly, is that financial viability of media is a prerequisite for good media work, good journalism. And I think our businesses understand that, because we do business in the same community in which we're doing journalism and media work. I also want to thank many of you who have showed your support in this forum today. And from the looks of it, we've got to continue the conversation on the business of media, Dr. Claire, because you've shown that this is something that has your attention, you want to talk about it, and there is a lot more to be said. So thank you very much. With that being said, thank you. Have a very good afternoon, and look forward to more from CARICHAM and CBU as we continue to work together to navigate this space. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Muted,
President Anthony. And I'm sure people are asking about the presentations being shared. I know that some of the decks are also going to be shared, and I know that the CBU Secretariat will be addressing that, certainly for everybody who was registered here. As we said, the conversation has started. There's a lot more to go into it. People will have takeaway from these things that they can put into their own context. As I said, context is very, very important. And I'm sure that this is screaming for a part 2, President. And
yes, definitely, very soon.
Yes, all right. So thanks, everybody, and have a very good day.